So, good morning or good night, depending on where you are in the world. And welcome to another episode of Is It That Bad? Where we take a look at an album that maybe got some mixed reviews and we talk about it and we see if it's that bad or not. And for this episode, Tom the Green Man suggested, since Architects is putting out a new record this year, that we talk about The Here and the Now, which is an album that came in 2012. And Tom, I gotta say, this is the album. When you suggested this album, I was like, I wasn't no. I think I started listening to Architects more with Daybreaker, which was the album that came after this one. So I didn't know this album really well, but yeah, I listened to it, and yeah, it's an interesting pick because I was reading and it did get some mixed reviews when it came out because they went in a more commercial side on this album, mixing metalcore with some even like emo tendencies in some of the songs. So I can see why it got some mixed reviews at the time. So yeah, for this episode, we have Tom the Green Man. Tom, how are you, man?
Good, thanks, Hector. Yeah.
Yeah, we have JC Rock and Metal Reviews. How are you, JC?
I'm doing good, thanks. Yeah.
We have Justin from the Heavy Business Podcast and Workers. How are you, Justin?
Good, man. Always fun to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad I got it. I always put the word metal, but before I'm like, no, it's not the metal. And finally, of course, I'm here. Obviously, this is my channel. So we are doing the three rounds. The first round, we're gonna give our first impressions of the album, what we thought of it. The second round, we pick three tracks that we think maybe are the weakest. And the third and final round, we're gonna give our final thoughts and a rating of thumbs up, thumbs sideways, or thumbs down. So since this was Tom the Green Man's pick, let's do Tom, then we'll go JC, Justin, and then me. So Tom, initial thoughts with this one.
Yeah, so I got on board with Architects with the Hollow Crown, and I remember really enjoying that album. And when the Here and Now came out, I didn't listen to it the year it came out. It was a bit later on. But reading up a bit more about this album and sort of pre and post release, sounds like the band wanted to have a change of direction. They didn't want a Hollow Crown Part 2. I think not something that was just kind of following on from that, sounding too similar to that. And they took, as you say, a bit more of a commercial, accessible direction. But post-album release, it seems like there were things about the album they liked less. It was more melodic, less aggressive than some of their past albums. Their first couple of albums were kind of pretty like mathcore, very, very kind of pretty technical as well. And this one's very different. It was sort of, it's interesting because we've just been talking about All That Remains and boy bandy choruses. And one of the funny sort of, what's the word, parallels almost to that conversation is that Architects didn't like the videos they were doing for the promotion of this album and for the singles because particularly the song Heartburn apparently made them feel like they were Westlife by the way they're kind of all standing in the road and the clothes they're wearing, all this kind of stuff, which apparently they really didn't like. And I guess this was before, so this comes after Hollow Crown, before Daybreaker. And yeah, I mean, my first impression of it was that I didn't think I disliked it particularly, but I do think as time has gone on, it's kind of like with a lot of the other Architects albums, this one's possibly my favorite next to Hollow Crown, which I've got on CD. So I just thought I'd show it because I always
Yeah,
do
that's
that
a
for some
great one.
reason. I always do that if I've got the CD nearby, I just show it off. And really quite like that was the last with Tom Sowell on as well, before he passed. But yeah, I really like that one. But yeah, this one kind of for me, it just didn't really, I don't know, it got more accessible, but didn't really work so much.
Okay, good first impressions. What about you, JC?
So I don't know this band that much. I first listened to them back in 2021 with their album For Those That Wish to Exist. and I didn't like that one. I just thought it was just very like commercial sounding. I couldn't get into that one. They released an album a year later called The Classic Symptoms of a Broken Spirit, and I think I did a review on my channel of it. I but I don't really remember that much, but I remember I didn't like give it like a bad review. I didn't hate it. I thought it was like just okay. So this is one of those bands that I'm not really into, but I'm familiar with their last few things. So I listened to this one, and I thought it wasn't that bad. I thought it was pretty much typical metalcore, what I would expect. But there was also some stuff where they went in like other directions, where they're playing some like acoustic stuff and some stuff that's like a little maybe like more like punk rock. I think they tried to experiment a little bit, and I think some of it worked, some of it didn't. So I'll be talking about more of that in the next rounds. But I think it's in general, I think there was some stuff here I liked. So yeah, that's it.
Awesome. So, what about you, Justin?
This was a weird one because Architects is a band I listen to literally every day. And for whatever reason, so I got into Architects around like All Our Gods Have Abandoned Us era. So I would say that's kind of like the beginning of the modern era of Architects. There's been different eras of the band, but I had gone back previously. And you get into a band, it's kind of natural to dig into the back catalog and see where they came from, go listen to the earlier stuff. I jumped right past this album and I went to the earlier albums, which is Tom talked about. Like they're almost like Dillinger Escape Plan, like very busy, very mathy, weird time signatures and stuff. So I guess I just assumed that this album sounded like that. So I had never clicked on this album before. So being a fan of this band, listen to it literally every day. When I clicked on this album, I would have never if I handed you the aux cable in my car and you started playing this album, I would have no idea that this was Architects. It sounds like a completely different band. Um, this really takes me to a place of like, I wouldn't even call this metalcore whatsoever. This sounds like the melodic, like early 2000s, like post-hardcore movement. I think this is closer related to a band like Thrice or like a Story of the Year type thing, or even like the Used than it is anything that even in the Architects catalog that they've done or that their peers have done. Doing a little digging into this album, it was produced by Steve Evetts, who actually produced Story of the Year, so it kind of made sense. But being a metal guy, I think everybody kind of puts me into a box, but I really, really love Thrice. Like I think Artist in the Ambulance is like a god tier album, always
Oh
will.
yeah.
And so I was very nostalgic for this album, even though like again, it didn't sound anything like Architects, and I didn't quite know what to make of it. Like I still I we'll get into it, but yeah, I mean it caught me off guard. We'll just say that. But I don't I was surprised to find out there was an album from Architects that people hated. And I guess I understand why. Like if you were a fan of the very busy technical albums that came before this, I could see where this would have been the most abrupt sound change in the history of sound changes. So yeah, I guess we'll dive into that.
Yeah. Good first impressions. So my first impressions are pretty similar to Justin's. Like if I would have been listening to the name Architects, I would thinking that I was listening to those bands. Like it has like that emo, like post-hardcore type of feel to it. And I was reading that for this album, Sam Carter had more singing lessons, so he could do cleans and start singing better. Which now I think that has helped him in the long run because now architects can experiment with some so much different sounds that they taken the mantle of Linkin Park. Uh, we don't need Linkin Park. We have architects, and they're doing it better. So on this one, if I didn't know it was architects, I would have thought it was a different band. So I'm like, am I judging this as an architect's record or so I thought like just forget that it's architects and just listen to the music because if I'm like, oh, this doesn't sound like architects, it's bad. But I'm like, is it bad really? I had quite a fun listening to this album. I also felt that nostalgic feeling of like this sounded like those albums that The Artist in the Ambulance is a great album. And I've seen Fry's live, and I'm telling you, amazing band. So to be compared to Fries is not an insult. It's quite good to be compared to a band of that caliber. Having said that, I can see why fans got a little bit put off because I think it's their most different sounding album. Like this sounds totally different. Even with the newer ones that they done now, because they do some modern stuff, but they still have that metal core. This one is like less metal core, and I think it's they were experimenting in some parts. It does sound more commercial than others, but it also they have two guest stars. They have Andrew Neufeld from Comeback Kid on a track, and they have oh my god, I forgot the name of the singer Greg Puciato from it's on the last track as
Lost track,
well.
yeah.
In year out, he's in that track, which I think is great. So yeah, it's this one was like it was a weird one to listen to, but I can see why it was so divisive. But since I've never heard this album before, I went with it. At first, I was taken aback. I'm like, this doesn't sound like Architect, but I'm liking it. So, yeah, those were my initial thoughts listening to this record. So, let's go to round two, where we're going to pick maybe three tracks that we think are the weakest. So, Tom, what three tracks did you pick and why?
Yeah, I wonder if one of the ones that I've missed out will be on all th your three lists. I'm just interested to see. But my first pick is an open letter to myself, which I found like a little bit of a sappy sort of ballads that gets more aggressive and a little bit more sort of angsty towards the end of the track. But my issue with that one was it's just, yeah, it just kind of didn't feel like the track worked. I mean, you had the starting soft parts and the crescendo into the last part of the song just didn't really work for me. It just felt a bit of an odd mix of a choice for that particular track. So that's my first one, an open letter to myself. The next two tracks I kind of put in here for similar reasons, really. I think that neither of them really moved me in any way. BTN and the blues, both kind of having a maybe what you were referring to, Hector, is the emo kind of vocal styling, but
Mhm.
just sounding so familiar. Like, I mean, of course, I've heard this album before, but this sounds like something I've heard from a different band before as well, and it just sounding so super familiar. Um, and I just couldn't really get into either of those tracks. I think of the two, the blues I maybe liked a little more. A little bit more instrumentally that I quite enjoyed, and perhaps the chorus a little more as well. But yeah, those are probably my three picks: the blues, BTN, and an open letter to myself. Yeah, and there's one track I've missed that I bet you're all thinking I might put on, but yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So, what about you, JC?
My first one I have is "Learn to Live." That's track number two. It's just very typical metalcore, just the clean vocals, lots of melody. I thought there were just too many like pop elements to the song, which is why I didn't like it. Next, I'll go with BTN. I thought it was just very predictable, generic, almost kind of like simple, almost like punk rock, that type of thing. The breakdown in the second part was not too bad, and I think my next pick is probably like my worst, which would be an open letter to myself. It's sounds like a post grunge band. Like I thought it sounded like the Foo Fighters. Like that's what it sounded like to me. Even though in the second half they make got it a little heavier. They brought in like those heavier vocals, but otherwise that song I feel like didn't really work for me. So that's it. Those are my three picks. Yeah.
Okay. Cool, man. So, what about you, Justin?
All right, so let me just start by saying, like, I didn't dislike a single song on this album. There were just songs that maybe weren't as strong as some of the others, but yeah, I think we're all in agreement here. Open Letter. I mean that song, it just felt like a lot of time to go nowhere. Like close to 4 minutes, just sort of, I don't know, drawn out. I didn't care for the lo-fi percussion, like kind of underbeat that was happening throughout the song. That felt like an unfinished Angels and Airwaves song to me. Like it's something that like Angels and Airwaves or another band would have like progressed and taken further. And like the midpoint of the song where they jump into the heavy vocals, like that would have been a really, really good place to evolve the song a little further and maybe change the energy or the direction a bit more. It just, I don't know, felt kind of flat. Felt kind of like an unfinished song to me. Um, I picked the blues as well. This song was again not a bad song, and like I gotta preface by saying like I like a lot of this stuff, but it's all about context here. Um, it gave me kind of like weird late 90s like Fat Records like punk kind of vibes at times, and not a bad thing. It just kind of the main like kind of verse riff felt very unoriginal, like I don't know, like I had heard it again from MXPX or 9,000 other bands prior to this. But it just felt lower effort, as far as the riffing and whatever, some of the other songs. But that really angsty, almost like Beartooth sounding riff goes super hard and would go over incredibly well today. So it's kind of funny how that works. So you got some kind of like lazy riffing, and then you got some riffing that just absolutely bangs that like kids would go nuts for right now. Architects fans would probably like that song better now than they liked it when it came out. But yeah, I mean, I just have no idea like what year it is right now or back then or whatever. Like I'm just kind of lost. This album just like jumps all over from like decade to decade, like sound to sound. So it's kind of weird song there. And then I picked Heartburn, and I felt like this was kind of a cop out pick, but it's almost like the same song as the open letter song. Like same gripe, same exact like lo-fi percussion, same sound. Like they didn't even change it much. They just added an acoustic guitar and a much better chorus in the song than the other one. But same basic song structure. You get like the lo-fi clean singing thing. You got the little like synthesizer sound and Casio drum beat in the background. But to me, this felt like it was kind of it was like a somewhat noble attempt to write like a starting line-esque like teenage movie soundtrack candidate. Like were they trying to get on like the next American Pie soundtrack or something with this? I don't know. But just kind of a forgettable track. Like even if I was to make a playlist of like, all the stuff that I loved of this era of the Thrice and all that sort of stuff, I this would never make the playlist, I guess. Like I would just cut this one. So
Okay,
those are my
good,
picks.
solid pick. So, for me, I may be in the minority here, but I like that open letter to myself. I don't know. I thought it was quite different. I thought it was quite good. I really enjoyed that track. I didn't enjoy Heartburn. I thought that one was more boy band-esque, and it sounded too polished and like they were trying too hard. I think An Open Letter to Myself for me sounded more real, and it had like a good change at the middle. So that's why I didn't pick with that one. But Heartburn, it was just too commercial sounding, too pristine. It almost sounded like they were a boy band with some guitars on that one. Or, as I like to call them, they sounded like the new Linkin Park on that one. So yeah, that one is one of the tracks that I picked. Let's say like Justin is like I didn't even though I dislike that song worse, I don't hate it. I don't think there's a track on this album that I would say is atrociously bad or sounds bad. So yeah, but Heartburn would be one. The other one I picked, JC picked as well, and it's Learn to Live. And I think what I don't like about that track, I don't know, it sounds like there's a lot of stuff happening. And I don't know where I was listening, it didn't sound that good. Like, I don't know if the production or something that track, like it sounded like too muffled, like everything was on top of everything, and I couldn't like quite enjoy it. And there's like a part in the choruses where there's like more people singing, where it felt a little bit disjointed. Like they did too much on that track. I think less on that track would have made it better. And the last one I picked, no one has picked because the last track has two parts. So there's like a what do you say, like that hidden track at the end, and there's a hidden track like the last 2.5 minutes called Up and Away, which does
Right.
nothing. I'm like after
I
that
almost
great,
picked that actually. Like I
yeah,
didn't pick it because it was like a hidden track, but I would have picked that one too. Yeah,
yeah, I picked it because
Same
it's
here,
the
just
hidden.
like
actually. Yeah.
country alternative. Like yeah,
Yeah, I picked it
yeah,
because you have a great album closer with Greg Puciato, and then you have like that afterthought at the end. I'm like, you could have taken that out and it wasn't needed. So to me, actually, that's the worst, the most forgettable track on the record is the hidden track.
yeah.
So those are my free picks. So yeah, everyone has picked something different. So now let's go to a third and final round where we give it our final thoughts and we get a thumbs up, thumbs sideways, or thumbs down. So, Tom,
Yeah, I think this album is one. It's hard to remove my, I guess, like disappointment with this album because I just find compared to lots of other Architects albums, I'm far more likely to revisit those than this. Really, there's just nothing really here that stands out particularly. I mean, it's the odd track here and there. I mean, Year In Year Out's pretty good with Greg Puciato. Um, the Heartburn song is one I almost included in my three, but there's something about that track that I didn't mind too much. It kind of was, it just had a certain quality to it that, you know, it's like you can listen to it. It's kind of nice, but very sort of very boy band-esque still. Um, and I liked Learn to Live actually. I quite enjoyed that one. Sort of liveliest track. Yeah, some of the Architect stuff I can hear there as well. And yeah, I do like Sam Carter as a vocalist a lot. And on this album, it kind of feels like I don't know if he's too sure sometimes what he kind of wants to do. I know that they're kind of trying to move more into commercial directions. So yeah, and in later albums, he kind of went back much more, I think, to his aggressive vocal approach than he does on this album as well. I mean, overall, I just find this one a little bit bland and yeah, I'm gonna give it a thumb sideways though. I don't particularly dislike it either, but yeah, I think I'm a thumb sideways.
okay. So we have our first vote, thumbs sideways. So, JC, your final thoughts on both?
Okay, I guess I liked it. I think well I'm not like a big fan of this band. I haven't listened to all their albums, so I don't really have anything to compare it to other than the last few. But I thought it was not bad. It had some so much variety. There's some songs I liked. I mean I liked Heartburn, even though it was like an acoustic ballad, but I thought that one worked. And there's some really good tracks. Like I liked Red Eyes. I mean I liked the guitar in that one. I liked the blues. That one I like. Delete Rewind, another one. Or just really great heavy drums and bass, and the riffs were really great in that one. So, thumbs up for me. I think it's a pretty decent album. I think it's something I wouldn't mind going back to.
Awesome. So, thumbs sideways, thumbs up. Justin?
All right. So, I can see why Architects fans were caught off guard when this thing came out. We have the benefit of listening to this with like more context, but to me, this is sort of like this is their fuel, or whatever that fucking Metallica load. This is their load, It's like every band has that one moment where they take a big risk and it either works or it doesn't. And I think here, I guess they took the feedback and went back to something similar to what they were doing. But the cool thing about this is that they found a path to commercial success anyway by evolving their original sound versus throwing it out the window. So, good on them. It's cool that they give the fans what they want, but they took a chance. Maybe this was a bit of a swing and a miss at the time. I would love to know how the guys in the band view this album. Like, I'd love to ask them what they think of this, 10, 15 years removed from it. But yeah, again, I mean, it just doesn't sound like Architects. Like, I would have never known that this was an Architects album if it didn't say Architects on the cover. Um, the other thought I had with this album is it maybe it was just a few years late to the party because this was I don't know if it was there was some mixed information. I think this might have come out in 2011 in the UK, but maybe we didn't get it till 2012 here. But regardless, this is like 2012. The bands that had success doing this sound were already 10 years into their success at the time that this would have come out. So like, Artist and Ambulance and like, Story of the Year, whatever the Page Avenue, like all those albums, those were very early 2000s. So I think that it's interesting, like if they had done this 10 years sooner, because they were already a band for quite a while at this point, it may have worked. But then that would have changed the course of history. We wouldn't have all the cool like modern Architects albums that we have now. So I don't know. I'm glad we covered this album because it was like a is a cool piece of Architects history that I wasn't aware of. Kind of gave me a better understanding of the band and like understanding a weird chapter in their history. Just as a fan, I think that it should be looked at for what it is. Like it was a sign of things to come, I guess. I don't know. But for me, thumbs up, man. It's a great album. It maybe if you were a diehard Architects fan when this came out, it disappointed you. But if you're a person listening to this and you're not married to the current metalcore sound and direction of Architects and you just want to listen to like a really cool post-hardcore album, check it out. Like I think this is a really good album.
Yeah, good. So we have two thumbs up, two thumbs sideways. So I gotta say, I really enjoyed a lot this album. I thought it's great. Yes, it doesn't sound like Architect, but there's good songs. It was hard to me to pick three songs actually of this record. And of the ones I picked, I don't hate either one of them. I just think they're the weakest on this one. But yeah, thumbs up. I think this is a great record. And I think I respect Architects because they're a band that took a risk and then maybe they had mixed feelings, but what they did with Daybreaker and their other album is like they incorporated some of their heavier stuff with some more modern stuff and kept getting better and better. And that's why they're the band that they are today. And yeah, I think Sam Carter on this one, taking vocal lessons, has really helped the band evolve to what they become. If not, they would have stayed stuck in that metalcore just sound and not evolved, and they would have been the band that they are today. So I think this is a great record, but I can see why it was a mixed bag for fans when it came out. I think if I had listened to this when it came out, would have no problem. But it's because my taste in music is so varied. I can listen to like extreme metal and then go and listen to Blink 182. So I have like very tasty music. So I'm not like married to like when a band, they always have to sound similar. No, bands can change just as long as they do it good. If they have done a post-hardcore but sucked, then we would have said like, because there's bands that change their sound but don't do it well. But I think Architects did it really well. So yeah, we have saved this album by Architects, the Here and the Now. And obviously, when the new album comes out, I'm sure I'm sure Tom and me are going to. I think we're all going to review it on our channels when it comes out because that's a big one. So yeah, so we want to know from you, Couchers, what do you think of Architects, the Here and the Now? What would you rate it? Like a thumbs up, thumbs sideways, thumbs down? Comment down below what tracks you don't like about this record. And obviously, let us know what else you like us to cover. I have a few ideas for albums that we want to cover, but fear not, we're going to do Steven Seagal with some other people who want to talk about that Steven Seagal record. Yeah, mainly Lorenzo. Lorenzo's really pumped to talk about that record. I'm like, why Lorenzo? But yeah, but we'll talk about that record. So please subscribe to my panel's channel, Justin Placing Workers. You can listen to his band and also the Heavy Business podcast. Where he talks to bands, he talks to people in the music industry, and for some reason they decided to interview me.
Yeah.
So subscribe to that podcast, and also C Squared. It's an awesome agency. They send me bands. I've interviewed a lot of bands because they send me bands. So yeah, Justin. Thank you for being here again, man.
Thank you. It's always fun, man.
Yeah. And obviously we have Tom the Green Man. And obviously, like if you like horror, if you like symphonic stuff, he does all that on the channel. And yeah, like thank you again, Tom, for taking some time to talk about, and thank you for bringing this album to us to talk this album.
Yeah, I thought it might be one that worth a chat. It's sort of an old one in their kind of history. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good one to talk about. And finally, JC Rock and Metal Reviews, he talks album reviews, metal, and he has a series where he goes around the world now and listen to albums. So JC, thank you for being here again.
All right, no problem. Well, thanks.
And finally, I want to thank myself for making my own video and being here to talk about music. So Couchers, this year, bigger stuff, and we gotta do it finally. The new series that wanted to premiere for a long time that should have been bigger. I'm going to be serious about that one. We're gonna pick a band, so we'll film something for that hopefully soon because I wanna start that new series that year. So yeah, coming up next, yeah, more interviews, more everything. So until next time, couchers, this is Hector, the chill dude on a couch, and I'll see you all right here on the couch. Thank you and goodbye.